Ah, there you are, friend. I've been waiting.
Come in, come in. Leave the cold outside. Find yourself a seat by the fire. Let the warmth seep into your bones. There's a mug waiting for you, and the night's still young.
You've come to the right place tonight, because here, beneath these old beams and flickering lanterns, we've always believed in the magic of a well-told story. And tonight, tonight's a special one. You'll hear of heroes in monsters, of paths crossed and choices made, of whispers in the dark and lights that refuse to die. And as you listen, who knows, maybe you'll see a little of yourself in the tale. So settle in, friend. Tonight, I'll be telling you the story of the serpent and the shadow. Lean close and let the words carry you. Chapter 1. The Mountain Coil. High atop the jagged cliffs of the Serpentine Mountains, where the winds wailed like lost souls and the clouds clung low against the peaks, there stood a fortress of stone, half ruin, half temple. Ivy choked its walls. Statues of forgotten gods crumbled at its gates, and within its cold, winding halls, she dwelled, waiting for inn and cart. Cassiopeia, once a noble daughter of House du Coutel, she had walked among the powerful of Noxus, her steps silk, her words honeyed poison. But ambition had driven her beyond the walls of her family's empire, into the sands of Shurima, where forbidden tombs promised secrets no mortal was meant to hold. It was there, beneath the earth, that she was remade. The venom of a cursed guardian, the bite of an ancient protector. Scales blossomed across her skin like jeweled armor. Her legs fused into a long, sinuous coil. Her pupils slit into serpentine focus. Where once she was a woman, now she was something more, something feared, and Cassiopeia embraced it. We fumble-side it. The serpent's reflection. She coiled before a shattered mirror, tracing a clawed fingertip along the silvered cracks. Her face remained untouched by the curse's grotesqueries, a haunting beauty with sharp cheekbones, emerald eyes that glowed faintly in the torchlight, lips full and stained a deep crimson. Her long dark hair tumbled over scaled shoulders, crowned by a subtle crest of bone that framed her forehead like a serpent's hood. But below the waist, a marvel and a terror. Her tail stretched nearly 20 feet, covered in interlocking scales that shimmered between deep jade and midnight black. Intricate patterns ran along her sides, shifting hypnotically as she moved. Muscle rippled beneath the scales, powerful and fluid. A rattling fringe adorned the final few feet of her tail, clicking softly as it flicked across the stone floor. She admired herself, not with vanity, but with cold satisfaction.
"I was made to slither in the dark," she murmured, "and they will fear the dark."
The web of power. Maps lay spread across a long stone table, weighed down with daggers. Red ink marked towns, villages, trade routes. Notes in flowing Noxian script annotated weaknesses, leadership hierarchies, supplies. Fear is faster than war, Cassiopeia mused aloud, her tail looping lazily beneath the table. A poisoned well here, a missing noble there, rumors of a serpent haunting the mountains. Her claw traced along a marked road. Let them whisper my name before they ever see me. For weeks, she had sent out agents, scouts, mercenaries, spies. They carried her venom in secret vials. They spread small plagues, stoked old rivalries, made monsters of shadows. Already, travelers feared the winding mountain passes, Traders spoke of glowing eyes among the rocks. Mothers warned their children of a snake witch who turned men to stone with a glance.
Cassiopeia smiled faintly.
The fear tasted sweet. The lair. Her throne sat at the heart of the fortress, a coiled nest of furs and silk, piled atop the shattered remains of old statues. Around it, stone columns wrapped in shed scales gleamed in the flickering torchlight. Glass terrariums lined the walls, each housing rare serpents from across Runeterra. The Ashfang adder of Piltover, the twin-headed Hissblood of Zorn, a coiled, slumbering viper drake hatchling from Shurima itself. Cassiopeia slithered past them, pausing to let a pale constrictor wind around her arm. She pressed her lips to its scaled head.
"Soon," she whispered to the snake, "all of them will bow to the serpent."
The snake flicked its tongue, sensing the promise in her voice. A new intruder. But tonight, something stirred beyond her walls. Cassiopeia felt it before she heard it. A disturbance in the outer courtyard. A shift in the air. A presence that moved like water, like shadow. She coiled tighter, rising higher, fangs barely peeking beneath her lips.
"Another fool comes seeking my head," she murmured.
She slithered toward the balcony, gazing down at the torchlit courtyard. A lone figure stood at the gate, tall, silent, clad in dark armor, his mask gleaming beneath the moonlight. Twin blades hung at his back.
Shen.
The Eye of Twilight. Cassiopeia's smile widened, equal parts curiosity and predation.
"Well, well," she purred. "What brings a Kinku dog so far from his leash?"
The wind stirred his cloak. "I seek the source of the poison that's spreading through these villages," Shen called up calmly. "I did not expect a Dukutao at its heart." Cassiopeia leaned over the railing, her emerald eyes gleaming.
"Then you should have known better," she said silkily.
"This serpent does not hide, Shinobi. She waits. She coils." She let her tail ripple along the stones behind her, the faint rattle echoing into the night. And she strikes. Her laughter echoed across the mountain. Shen stood unmoving, unreadable behind his mask. The tension coiled between them. Hunter and hunter, shadow and serpent. And so began their dance. Chapter 2. The Path of Twilight. Night stretched across Ionia like a silk shroud, cool and endless. The stars blinked faintly above, veiled by drifting clouds. At the edge of a moonlit forest, Shen sat cross-legged beneath an ancient tree, his blades laid carefully beside him. His eyes were closed, his breathing steady, but his mind was not still. Tonight, the balance had shifted, and he had felt it. A whisper on the wind, a tremor beneath the earth, the ripple of something unnatural moving beyond Ionia's borders. A darkness coiling, the weight of the eye. He opened his eyes. Before him, nestled in a hollow of stone, glowed a faint sigil, the mark of the Eye of Twilight. Burning softly with azure light, he traced it with his gloved fingers, feeling the familiar pulse of its presence, a tether between the physical world and the spirit realm. A burden he had inherited from his father, from his master before him, from a lineage stretching back further than memory. The eye did not judge. It did not take sides. It watched, and Shen had vowed to maintain the balance. But now, the balance faltered. Villages in northern Noxus spoke of poisonings, of wells turned black overnight, of children's eyes glassy, unmoving, of serpents slithering beneath floorboards where no snake should fit. The whispers led to the mountains, to a fortress carved into stone, to a name Shen had not heard in many years. Cassiopeia du Couteau, a memory. He remembered seeing her once, years ago, in Noxian halls, when he had accompanied his father on a diplomatic visit. A girl, then, younger than him, with dark hair and cold, assessing eyes. Even as a child, she had wielded silence like a blade. Her words few, but cutting. Her gaze sharp, weighing everyone she looked at. Be wary of the quiet ones, his father had warned. They watch, they plot. He hadn't thought of her again, until now. The call. Ionia's balance does not stretch to Noxus, his comrade Kennen had reminded him when Shen prepared to leave. But poison knows no borders, Shen had replied. Akali had laughed bitterly. Let them drink their own venom. Why should we risk our lives? Shen's gaze had been steady. Because every life is part of the whole, even if they hate us, even if they would take our lands tomorrow. He strapped his blades across his back. Eye on the eye, and the eye does not close. The journey, the path had been long, through Ionian hills, across Piltover's bridges, into the iron heart of Noxus, and then further, higher, toward the lonely peaks of the Serpentine Mountains, where maps ended and fear took root. At each village he passed, the signs worsened. Children, fevered and coughing. Elders muttering of visions. Snakes curled in doorways like omens. He watched a mother burn her crops after finding a serpent's skeleton among the roots. Saw traders refuse to take the mountain roads, even at sword point. The serpent is waking, they whispered, and Shen knew. This was not a sickness, not a plague. It was a will that spread venom beneath the soil, that tightened its coils around the weak and the desperate. A will that hungered the climb. Now, standing before her fortress gates, Shen felt the air shift, a coiled presence watching from above. He could sense her, Cassiopeia, transformed, cursed, and yet still herself. He felt no hatred toward her, but he felt the danger. Why poison these people, Cassiopeia? He called into the night. What have they done to you? No answer came, only the rattle of scales on stone. A low, silken laugh, carried by the wind. You wouldn't understand, Shinobi. Her voice purred from the shadows. You were born with power. I had to take mine. The fortress gates creaked open. Come, then, she invited. See what I've built. Shen drew his twin blades, letting them hum in the night air. I don't seek to destroy you, he said softly. Only to stop the poison. A pause. Then her voice, closer now, dripping with dark amusement. Then you'll have to cut me out. Piece by piece. Shen stepped forward, vanishing into the gates, into the coils of the serpent's lair, into the balance's most fragile test. Chapter 3. Fangs and Shadows. The gates groaned shut behind him. Shen advanced into the fortress's belly, twin blades gleaming faintly in the torchlight. The air smelled of ash and musk, tinged with something older. Venom. The walls curved like a serpent's ribs. Statues half swallowed by creeping ivy loomed along the passage. Somewhere deeper, water dripped steadily, echoing into vastness. And then, a whisper of scales, a flicker of emerald eyes. Cassiopeia emerged from the shadows, coiled atop a raised dais beneath a cracked dome, the moonlight tracing her scales like jewels. Well, she purred, resting her chin lazily atop one clawed hand. You climbed all this way just to die beneath me? Shen's gaze never wavered. I did not come to die, he said quietly. Only to stop you. Her lips curled into a sly smile. Oh, darling, those are the same thing. She surged forward, faster than he anticipated, a blur of scales and claw, tail lashing beneath her. Shen pivoted, bringing his first blade across in a sweeping arc, deflecting the strike aimed for his throat. CLA. Ching. Her claws sparked against steel. Then she twisted mid-air, using the momentum of her tail to whip around behind him. Shen spun with her, parrying the next slash, his second blade intercepting a strike aimed for his kidney. Good reflexes, Cassiopeia purred, circling him like a predator. Not bad for a man chained by duty. Shen remained silent, stepping carefully along the uneven floor, blades raised in twin arcs of defense. You Kinku are so serious, she teased, fangs glinting beneath her lips. Doesn't it exhaust you pretending you're above desire? Her tail snapped forward like a whip. Shen's blade barely caught it in time, sparks flying as metal kissed scale. But the force of the strike hurled him backward, boots skidding across stone. He landed low, breath steady. No pretense, he answered calmly. Only balance. Cassiopeia tilted her head, mock thoughtful. Balance? She echoed. Tell me, Shinobi, what balances the poison in a child's veins? Her eyes flared green. She spat a jet of venom toward him. Shen whirled, cloak flaring as he vanished into a blur of shadow, reappearing atop a stone pillar behind her. Justice, he replied. And he leapt. The battle moves. Cassiopeia coiled upward, meeting his descending strike with both claws, intercepting the blades in a hiss of sparks. Their faces were inches apart now, her breath warm, scented faintly of spice and death. You really do have beautiful eyes, she mused, pressing harder. Shen said nothing, only shifted his weight, twisting his lower blade beneath hers and hooking her wrist, forcing her claw aside. His upper blade came down, but she darted backward, her tail snapping forward to entangle his ankle. Not so fast, darling, she yanked. Shen's balance broke. He fell sideways, landing on his shoulder as Cassiopeia lunged overhead, claws raking the floor where he'd been. He rolled, kicking upward, his boot slamming into her midsection. Cassiopeia grunted, recoiling, but then struck the pillar behind her with her tail, dislodging it. The crumbling stone tumbled toward Shen. He slashed upward, cleaving the boulder in two. But the debris cloud swallowed him. Cassiopeia slithered higher into the cavernous hole, using the shattered terrain like a spiral ramp, her voice echoing from above. Why fight me, Shen? Why protect a kingdom that would never protect you? Shen emerged from the dust cloud, leaping from boulder to broken beam, ascending in silent pursuit. Because protection does not require their gratitude, he answered. She laughed softly. Ah, the noble fool. She coiled atop a crumbling archway, venom gathering at her lips. Let's see how noble you stay when the ground gives way. With a powerful twist of her tail, she shattered the arch beneath her. Cracks spidered outward. Stone groaned. The cavern floor beneath them rumbled ominously. The fall. Shen sprang forward as the floor buckled, slicing across a support beam to reach her. Cassiopeia lashed at him, claws flashing in the half-light, tail looping to catch his strike. Their weapons clashed mid-air, and then, with a deep, earth-shaking crack, the entire floor beneath them collapsed. Both combatants plunged downward as the cavern gave way, stone and dust tumbling alongside them into a vast black chasm. Cassiopeia's emerald eyes locked with Shen's as they fell, the battle unresolved, the duel unfinished. "Looks like we're both in the pit now, darling," she called over the roaring wind. Shen's blades gleamed as he adjusted mid-fall.
We will rise again.
Their figures vanished into the dark. The echoes of Stonefall swallowed the last of the light. Chapter 4. Beneath the Mountain. Darkness. Shen's mind returned first, before sensation, before sound. Then the ache settled in, the distant hum of energy pulsing through his limbs, the weight of stone dust on his cloak. He opened his eyes. Above him stretched a faint glimmer of light, a distant hole high in the ceiling of the ravine. Jagged rocks jutted around him in towering spires, sharp and unforgiving. But he was alive. He rose slowly, brushing debris from his armor. His legs trembled faintly beneath him, but held. The spirit protected me, he realized, feeling the lingering warmth of his inner ki. At the last moment, he had channeled a surge of energy, guiding it downward to slow his descent. A flicker of motion caught his eye. Farther down the ravine, along a sloped wall of rock, something slithered painfully down a jagged incline. Cassiopeia. The serpent's wound. Her tail dragged behind her, scales scraped and torn where she'd used her body to break against the cliff walls. Blood, a deep, unnatural green, slicked the stones beneath her, leaving a winding trail as she struggled forward. She collapsed at the ravine's base, one clawed hand bracing herself against the cold earth, the other clutching her side where a deep gash pulsed between her scales. For a moment, she simply breathed, ragged, shallow, defiant. Then she looked up and saw Shen standing above her, blades still sheathed, gaze unreadable. "Well," she rasped, a bitter smirk curling her lips. "Go on then, Shinobi. Finish it." Her tail coiled weakly beneath her, muscles trembling. "Isn't this the part where the hero kills the monster?" Shen stepped forward, his shadow long against the cavern wall. But he did not draw his blades. He crouched beside her, instead, his expression calm but grave. "You're not a monster, Cassiopeia," he said quietly. "You're a person who's been hurt, and who's chosen to hurt others." He extended a gloved hand. "Let me help you." Cassiopeia's smirk faltered. "You're either a fool," she whispered, "or you pity me." "I see you," Shen replied. "That is all." For a heartbeat, she hesitated. Her claws flexed, her breathing slowed. But then, her tail lashed outward, striking his arm aside. "Don't pretend mercy is kindness," she snapped, pulling herself upright despite the pain. "I didn't crawl this far from weakness just to beg at your feet." She coiled back warily, chest heaving. "I don't want your help, Shadow Man." Shen stood, watching her carefully. "Then I cannot force it." They faced each other in silence beneath the mountain, two figures wrapped in opposing codes, her eyes burning with stubborn defiance, his gaze heavy with quiet resolve. At last, Cassiopeia turned, slithering deeper into the ravine's shadows, her bleeding tail dragging a fading line behind her. "Stay out of my way, Shen," she called over her shoulder, voice cold but hollow. "Next time, I won't miss." Her silhouette disappeared into the gloom.
The Watcher.
Shen stood alone, the silence pressing in like a weight. Then, a flicker, a subtle movement at the edges of his perception. He turned sharply, eyes narrowing. From the deeper tunnels, something watched. Not Cassiopeia, not human. A shape too large for a serpent, too silent for a beast. Eyes gleamed faintly in the dark, pale and lidless, unblinking. The air shifted. and the presence withdrew, melting back into the black. Shen's hand hovered over his blade hilt.
"Not alone down here," he murmured.
He glanced once more toward the path Cassiopeia had taken, then toward the deep, waiting dark, and quietly, deliberately, he followed. Chapter 5. Scales Against Fire. Cassiopeia's claws scraped against the stone as she dragged herself forward, blood slicking the ground beneath her. Her breath came in ragged gasps, chest tight with exhaustion and pain.
"Not here. Not like this."
The darkness around her pulsed with cold. Her scales burned where they'd scraped raw against the cavern walls. Every coil of her tail felt heavier than iron. She collapsed against a boulder, fangs bared in frustration.
"Not like this," she hissed aloud.
She had fought wars with whispers, had poisoned empires one sip at a time, had climbed from the wreckage of her old life with nothing but venom and will. She wasn't going to die alone in some forsaken ravine.
Not powerless.
Not forgotten.
The lurking hunger.
A shift in the air.
Cassiopeia's emerald eyes snapped open. She felt it, a deep, primal rumble vibrating through the rocks beneath her belly. The faint scrape of talons against stone, the acrid scent of sulfur curling into her nostrils. A shape emerged from the shadows.
A dragon.
Not a great, ancient beast of legend, but a young drake, sinewy and hungry. Its scales mottled bronze and black. Smoke curled from its nostrils as it prowled along the cavern wall, wings half-folded, luminous eyes locked on her bleeding form. Cassiopeia swallowed hard.
Of course, she muttered bitterly. Of course it's a dragon.
The drake snarled, saliva sizzling against the rocks.
It lunged,
fangs against flame. Cassiopeia coiled instinctively, striking first, her fangs burying deep into the dragon's foreleg. Venom surged into its veins. The drake roared, rearing back, its claw swiping across her flank. Scales ripped free. She hissed in pain, darting under its belly, slashing its softer skin with her claws. It twisted violently, smashing its tail into her side. Cassiopeia slammed against the cavern wall, stars bursting behind her eyes. Blood spattered the stone. Too fast, too strong. She pushed up shakily, weaving around a gout of flame, spitting venom toward its face. The dragon blinked, briefly dazed, but advanced relentlessly. Cassiopeia's vision blurred.
I can't.
The dragon loomed over her, maw wide, fangs glistening. I won't beg. She glared up defiantly, baring her own fangs as it lunged.
And then,
a flicker of light, a soundless pulse. A glowing sigil burst into form beneath her, wrapping her in a shimmering protective aura. Her body, moments from impact, was swallowed by soft, radiant shielding. A shadow dropped beside her.
"Shen," she whispered.
Stand united. He landed in a crouch, blades drawn, the last echoes of the twilight mark fading from the air around her. You are not alone, Shen said calmly, standing between her and the dragon. Cassiopeia stared, stunned, feeling the warmth of his shield dissipate over her scales. You used it on me, she breathed, disbelief coloring her voice. He stepped forward, blades raised. I won't let you die here. The dragon roared again, charging. Shen moved like water, dodging, deflecting, redirecting its claws with circular sweeps of his blades. His strikes were precise, elegant, each one parrying rather than attacking, weaving the dragon's strength away from his weakened companion. But even his grace had limits. A wing buffeted him sideways. A claw scraped down his back, armor groaning beneath the blow, blood welled beneath the plates. Still he stood. He struck the dragon's snout, deflecting another bite. With a deft twist, he flipped onto its back, slashing along a wing joint. The dragon howled, staggering backward, wings folding protectively. It hissed once, then retreated into the shadows, limping but alive.
Waiting, watching.
The sound of its growl lingered deep in the cavern.
The aftermath. Shen dropped to one knee, breathing heavily.
Cassiopeia slithered forward, eyes narrowed.
You're hurt.
Shen nodded faintly, wiping blood from his lip.
It'll heal.
But his legs trembled. His hands shook faintly beneath his gloves. Cassiopeia stared at him.
You should have let me die. You should have left me.
She hovered beside him, coils tense. Her claws flexed once.
I could end him right now.
Her eyes flicked to the dragon's trail, to the lurking danger in the dark. But then we both die. She sighed sharply, slithering closer.
Idiotic, she muttered.
Before Shen could respond, she coiled her massive tail around him, pressing his body against her own, wrapping him tightly beneath her larger scales. He stiffened in surprise.
What are you doing? Shen asked.
Keeping you alive, idiot, she snapped. You lost too much blood. It's freezing down here.
He hesitated. You didn't have to. Cassiopeia's lips curved faintly. I really didn't, she agreed dryly. Silence hung between them, awkward and heavy.
This isn't happening, Shen murmured.
Nope, Cassiopeia agreed, curling tighter. We're not cooperating. Absolutely not. And you're not protecting me. Don't be absurd. And I'm not trusting you. Good, she whispered, eyes fluttering shut. Neither am I. But still, she held him. And in the cold, beneath the waiting dragon's shadow, warmth lingered. Quiet, unexpected, undeniable. Chapter 6. Wings from the Abyss. Cassiopeia's tail uncoiled as Shen stirred beneath her. His breaths steadier now. The bleeding slowed. Time to move, she murmured. Shen sat up slowly, his back stiff with pain. The cavern around them stretched vast and hollow, jagged pillars rising like broken ribs from the earth. Above, the distant ceiling glimmered faintly where moonlight filtered down. But it might as well have been the sky itself, for how unreachable it seemed. No visible paths, no ladders, no way up. Cassiopeia scanned the cavern, frustration knotting in her chest. I've scaled palaces, slithered through war zones, and I'm going to rot in a cave. Shen stood beside her, silent but watchful. They searched. Together, they traced the cavern walls, looking for handholds, weaknesses, hidden crevices. Shen tested collapsed tunnels. Cassiopeia slithered into cracks too narrow for him, only to emerge, shaking her head. Each path led to a dead end. Cassiopeia slammed her tail against a boulder, scales flaring.
Useless, she hissed. We're trapped.
Shen placed a calming hand against the stone.
Patience.
Don't tell me to be patient, she snapped, eyes flashing. Every second we waste down here is another step closer to dying from that thing. He regarded her quietly.
You're afraid.
She bared her fangs. I'm angry. Sometimes, Shen said softly. Those are the same. Cassiopeia's lips parted, but no retort came. A long silence stretched between them, heavy but less hostile. Then her voice softened. You think you know me, Shinobi? I know you were betrayed, Shen said. I know you sought power to never be weak again. She stared at him. I know what that burden feels like. Her gaze lowered. Her tail coiled loosely beneath her. I never wanted this, she admitted quietly. I wanted to protect them, my family, my name. Her claws traced a crack in the stone.
But I wasn't enough. So I became more.
Shen's brow furrowed. And I was raised to be enough for everyone, whether I wished it or not. Cassiopeia chuckled dryly. So, we're both weapons. He nodded. But a weapon, he said, can choose what it defends. She glanced at him. Maybe. The return of the dragon. A rumble echoed through the cavern. Cassiopeia's head snapped up. Its back. The young dragon slivered from the shadows, wings half unfurled, scales gleaming dully beneath the distant light. Smoke coiled from its jaws. Its hunger shone brighter than its rage now. Shen drew his blades. Cassiopeia poised her claws. Together? She asked.
Shen nodded once.
Together, the dragon lunged. The battle. Cassiopeia darted low, her tail looping around a rock pillar as she swung herself beneath the dragon's chest, claws slashing at its softer scales. Shen vaulted onto its back, his blades tracing clean arcs along the joints of its wings, targeting nerves, tendons, weak points. The dragon roared, twisting violently, throwing them both off. Cassiopeia hit the ground with a painful grunt, curling her tail protectively. Shen rolled into a crouch, deflecting a snapping maw with the flat of his blade. "We're not killing it," Shen called over the dim. "We need it." Cassiopeia narrowed her eyes.
Then what's your plan?
He pointed to the dragon's neck. "The ridge. If I can anchor a tether." Cassiopeia's eyes gleamed. "I can coil it. Bring it down." A silent agreement passed between them. Shen sprinted forward, blade gleaming as he leapt toward the dragon's neck. He drove his sword into the ridged scales, anchoring a tether of key energy that pulsed outward. Cassiopeia's tail snapped up, lashing around the tether, using it as leverage to spiral up the dragon's neck, her body tightening in loops. The dragon thrashed, snarling, wings flapping wildly. But together, they pulled. The dragon's wings folded, its neck arched. It dropped lower, pinned beneath their combined grip. Cassiopeia hissed beside its ear.
"Yield." The dragon growled low.
And still, chest heaving, eyes gleaming, but no longer thrashing. Cassiopeia glanced at Shen, breathless, sweat gleaming along her scales. "We control it?" Shen stepped beside her, hand resting on the dragon's side. "It respects strength." She traced a claw along its scales thoughtfully. "Then let's fly." The ascent. The dragon's wings unfurled, vast and powerful, with Shen gripping a ridge along its shoulders and Cassiopeia coiled firmly around its back. The dragon spread its wings and leapt into the cavern's open air, beating hard against the stillness. Stone walls blurred past as they ascended. Higher, higher. Cassiopeia's hair whipped wildly in the wind, her heart pounding with exhilaration and disbelief. They burst through the hole in the cavern ceiling into the moonlit night. Cool wind swept across them. Above them, the stars shimmered. Cassiopeia looked at Shen. Shen looked at Cassiopeia. Neither spoke, but both, in that fleeting moment, understood. Enemies no longer. Not quite friends, but survivors. Together. Chapter 7. Stone and Venom. The dragon's wings beat harder as it soared above the mountain ridge. Higher, faster, pulling away. Cassiopeia clung tighter, but the beast writhed beneath her. "It's breaking free," she hissed. Shen braced his stance atop its back. "Hold on." But with a final violent twist, the dragon bucked them both loose, sending them tumbling through the cold air. Shen twisted mid-fall, catching Cassiopeia's arm to slow her descent before they crashed into the grass below. They rolled apart, panting. Above them, the dragon vanished into the night, its silhouette shrinking against the moon. Cassiopeia stared after it, chest rising and falling. "There it goes," she murmured. Shen rose beside her, brushing dirt from his cloak. "We made it out," he said quietly. "That's what matters." She glanced at him, her scales faintly bruised, lips pressed thin. "Now what, Shinobi?" Shen extended a hand toward her. "There's a village 2 miles east," he said. "I know the healer there. Come, we'll tend your wounds." Cassiopeia stared at his hand, then at her coils, still slick with blood. "Do you think they'll welcome this?" she asked, bitterly, gesturing to her serpentine form. "They'll see who you are," Shen replied. Cassiopeia laughed softly, a sound both amused and hollow. "No, Shen," she whispered. "They'll see what I am." The reluctant path. He waited. Finally, with a low hiss of exasperation, Cassiopeia took his hand. "Fine," she muttered. "Lead the way. But I'm telling you, this ends badly." Shen nodded, silent. They walked together beneath the trees, moonlight dappling the path. Shen's steps steady, Cassiopeia's tail dragging faintly behind. For the first time in days, the night felt almost peaceful. The village lay nestled in a hollow, its lights warm against the dark. Smoke curled from chimneys. Lanterns bobbed gently along the paths. As they approached, voices murmured. Faces peered from windows. But when Cassiopeia slithered into view, their expressions changed. First surprise, then fear, then horror. "She's a stake," someone gasped. "Sorcery! Nonster!" A cry went up. Pitchforks and torches lit the air. Cassiopeia's breath caught. "Shen?" "I'm here," he said firmly, stepping in front of her. "Stay close." The villagers surged forward. Shen raised a calming hand. "We mean no harm." A rock flew, striking Cassiopeia's shoulder. She recoiled, hissing in pain. Another stone, then another. Cassiopeia's pupils narrowed. "Shen, there." "Stay calm," Shen urged, but something inside her snapped. A lifetime of rejection, of revulsion, of being feared. Her eyes glowed brilliant green. "Enough," she whispered. Her spine straightened, her fangs bared, and with a furious cry, she unleashed her gaze. "Petrify." A shockwave of emerald energy burst from her eyes, rippling across the crowd. The villagers froze mid-motion. Stones swept over their bodies, limbs locked, faces frozen in masks of terror. In seconds, the entire crowd stood petrified, unmoving statues beneath the village lanterns. Cassiopeia's breath heaved, her heart pounding. Shen stared at the scene, his jaw tight. "Kasakia," he murmured. Her lips trembled. "I didn't," she whispered. Shen stepped forward, slowly. "You acted in fear." She recoiled, eyes wide. "I acted because of what I am." She snapped. "I told you, Shen. They'd never accept me." He reached a hand toward her. "We can fix this. Together." Cassiopeia's gaze softened, just for a fleeting heartbeat, then hardened again. "No," she said quietly. She raised a clawed hand. A wall of vile green venom erupted from the earth between them, seething and hissing, a barrier of poison that shimmered in the night. Shen stepped back, coughing as the fumes curled around him. Cassiopeia stared across the divide. "Thank you," she said softly, almost broken, for trying. She began to slither away, her silhouette retreating into the woods. "Maybe another time," she called over her shoulder. Another life. And then she was gone. The poison wall slowly dissipated. Shen stood alone among the stone forms, the night wind cold around him. And for the first time in many years, he felt small. The night stretched wide and silent over the mountains. Shen stood at the edge of the poisoned earth, watching the trail where Cassiopeia had disappeared. The wind stirred faint wisps of venom that still clung to the grass, curling around his boots like dying ghosts. Above him, the stars blinked faintly. Below him, the petrified villages stood locked in their final moments. And within him, an unfamiliar ache. Not anger, not disappointment, something quieter. Regret. He traced the scar on his shoulder, where her tail had once coiled around him in that dark cavern. Another life, he murmured aloud. He wasn't sure if it was a promise or a farewell. Far from the village, Cassiopeia slithered beneath the shadows of tall trees, her coils leaving faint trails in the damp earth. Moonlight flickered between the branches, gilding her scales and silver. She paused at a stream's edge, lowering her face to the water. Her reflection stared back, beautiful, terrible, lonely. She touched the water's surface, distorting her image. He saw me, she thought, and I pushed him away. Her claws clenched. I had to, she whispered. Didn't I? The night offered no answer, only the rustle of distant wings. She gazed toward the mountains, toward the ridge where the dragon had fled, where the stars still glimmered above the cliffs. Another life, she echoed softly. Her eyes narrowed. Or maybe not so far away. Two paths. In the days that followed, stories spread of a serpent witch vanishing into the highlands, of a masked warrior wandering alone beneath the moon, of a village frozen in stone, a warning and a mystery. Neither Cassiopeia nor Shen spoke of that night again, but in quiet moments, beneath the stars, each wondered, would they meet again as enemies, as allies, or is something neither yet understood? The wind carried no answer, only the faintest whisper, a promise, waiting in the dark. End of Book 1. Teaser for Book 2. Deep beneath the mountains, the dragon's eyes opened once more. Hungry, watching, waiting. And elsewhere, a letter sealed in black wax arrived at Shen's temple, bearing a mark he thought long lost. Their paths were not done crossing. Not yet.
The cold bit at Akali's cheeks as she sprinted across the narrow mountain path, her breath steaming in the icy night. Her lungs burned, her side throbbed from a deep cut just beneath her ribs, where a blade had found her minutes ago. Blood seeped through her wrappings, leaving a trail like ink on parchment. Damn it, she muttered under her breath, glancing over her shoulder. 3 silhouettes followed, leaping between rocks and outcroppings with silent precision. Their masks gleamed under the crescent moon. Kinku agents. Once they were her kin. Now they hunted her. She pushed harder, feet skidding on loose gravel, clutching her side. Every pulse of pain reminded her she wouldn't outrun them forever. Need shelter. Somewhere to hide. Somewhere. Her gaze darted ahead, and then she saw it. A small building nestled against the cliff. Warm light flickering behind its windows. Smoke coiled from a chimney. A sign hung crookedly above the door. Atreus's hearth sign. A bakery. Here? She had no time to question it. Akali staggered toward the door, nearly collapsing as she reached it. Her fist pounded once, twice, before her legs gave out and she slumped against the wood. Please, she rasped. Help. Her vision swam. but she heard footsteps inside. The door creaked open, and a shadow loomed over her, broad-shouldered, towering, wrapped in an apron dusted with flour. "By the mountain," the man said, voice deep with surprise. "Akali." Her lips parted. "You know me. I've heard stories." Before she could respond, black spots danced at the edges of her sight. "They're coming." And then darkness took her. Moments earlier, the chase. Before the bakery had appeared in the distance, Akali had fought them in the woods. It was supposed to be a simple mission, a sabotage, a warning to the Order, but somehow they'd ambushed her instead. 3 against 1. Each move, each strike, was meant to maim, not kill. They wanted her alive. "Come home, Akali," one had called. "The Kinku can forgive, but not if you keep running." "I am home," she had snarled, twisting midair to deflect a thrown kunai with the flat of her kama. Her blade danced in the moonlight, cutting arcs of silver against the dark. Another ninja rushed her from behind. She spun low, sweeping his legs. He hit the ground hard, but rolled with it, already rising. They were trained well, too well. A third flanked her side, blade gleaming. Akali darted backward, but too late. The edge kissed her skin, slicing deep. Pain, blood. She growled, slamming a smoke bomb to the ground. A hiss of cover, a swirl of shadows. She bolted, weaving through the trees, heart hammering. But they followed, always behind her, silent as ghosts, until she crested the final hill and saw the light. Inside the bakery, the warmth wrapped around her like a blanket when she woke. Soft firelight danced across wooden beams. She lay on a bench beside a hearth, bandages wrapped snugly around her middle. The scent of baking bread filled the air, rich, yeasty, comforting. Akali groaned, blinking up at the ceiling. "Where? You're safe." She turned her head. The man from the doorway stood over a counter, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in a mound of dough. His forearms flexed as he needed, powerful yet gentle. His hair fell in loose waves over his brow, and a thick apron clung to his broad frame. Her eyes widened in recognition. "Pantheon?" He glanced back, lips curling faintly. "Atreus, actually. Pantheon died when the stars abandoned him." Akali winced as she sat up. "You're a baker now." "I am many things. Warrior, fool, baker." He pressed the dough flat, dusting it with flour, but mostly tired of war. She watched him silently. Her body ached, but her curiosity burned brighter. "Why help me?" "Because you knocked on my door." A sudden noise outside. The crunch of footsteps on snow. Akali stiffened. "They're here." Pantheon wiped his hands on a cloth, reaching for something in the corner. A long polearm. Her eyes widened. "You kept the spear?" He tested its weight, nodding once. Didn't expect to need it again. Then he turned, striding for the door. "Stay inside," he told her, voice low. "You're not dying today." And with that, he stepped into the night. Akali watched from the window, her body heavy with exhaustion. Every breath ached, every muscle trembled. She wanted to move, wanted to help, but her limbs refused. Her hand pressed weakly against the glass as Pantheon turned toward her, victorious beneath the moonlight. He met her gaze and gave a small, tired smile. "Stay there," he called gently. "I'll handle the rest." Moments later, the door creaked open, letting in a gust of cold air, and Pantheon's solid figure. His chest rose and fell steadily as he set down his spear by the door. His gaze softened when he saw her still slumped by the window. "You shouldn't be on your feet," he murmured. "I wasn't," she rasped. "Just watching." Without another word, he approached. scooping her into his arms with surprising gentleness. Akali felt herself being lifted, cradled against warmth and strength. "You've lost too much blood," he said quietly. "You need rest." She didn't protest. Her head fell against his shoulder as he carried her deeper into the bakery, past shelves of bread and sacks of flour. He pushed open a simple wooden door at the back, revealing a small room. A bed, a desk, a single candle burning low. He set her down onto the bed, pulling a wool blanket over her. "You sleep," he said, adjusting the covers. "I'll finish the bread." Her eyelids fluttered, the warmth of the quilt wrapping around her like a cocoon. "You're kind," she whispered drowsily. Pantheon chuckled softly. Not often called that. As she drifted into sleep, the faint sounds of baking filled the air. The rustle of flour, the tap of a rolling pin, the hollow knock of dough tested for readiness. The scent of bread, rich, yeasty, alive, drifted into the room like a comforting lullaby. Hours passed before Akali stirred again. The fire still glowed in the hearth outside the room. She inhaled deeply, the aroma of freshly baked loaves lingering like an embrace. "Why do you do it?" she murmured, voice hoarse but curious. Pantheon glanced over from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Do what?" "Bake." He paused, then leaned against the doorframe, thoughtful. "I used to wield war," he said slowly. "My hands were meant for breaking, for holding a spear, for ending lives." He looked down at his calloused palms, turning them over in the firelight. "But when the stars abandoned me, I realized I had nothing to show for it. No legacy. Just ashes. Just blood." He stepped forward, setting a loaf on the windowsill to cool. "Bread is different. You take flour, water, salt, simple things. You knead, you wait, you give it heat, and when it rises, it's proof." His eyes softened, distant. "Proof that patience can create, that strength can build." He looked at her, his gaze steady. "It's the opposite of war." Akali watched him quietly from the bed, her lips parting slightly. "That's beautiful," she whispered. Pantheon shrugged, half smiling. "It's breath." She let her head sink back onto the pillow, a small smile curling at the edges of her mouth. "It's more than bread," she murmured. Her sleep claimed her again. "It's peace." Pantheon stood a while longer, watching the last embers in the hearth. Outside, the mountain wind howled. Inside, the baker worked. Chapter 2. Kneading Hearts. The morning sun crept over the peaks of Targon, painting the stone cliffs in gold and rose. Light filtered through the shutters of the small bedroom, falling across Akali's face. She stirred beneath the quilt, wincing slightly as she shifted. But the deep ache from last night had softened into a dull throb. She was alive, and something smelled amazing. Her stomach growled loudly. Akali pushed herself up slowly, biting back a groan as her ribs protested. The bandages were snug but clean. Someone had changed them while she slept. Her eyes drifted around the modest room, the simple desk, the wooden chair, the single candle stub still faintly smoking, and beyond the doorway, warmth, light, and the smell of something buttery and sweet. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, planting her bare feet on the cool floor. Time to see what the baker's up to. The kitchen. When she stepped into the main room, she paused. Pantheon stood at the stove, bathed in golden sunlight, stirring something in a large pan. His apron hung low across his hips, muscles shifting beneath the sleeves of his tunic as he moved with quiet focus. A loaf of bread cooled on the windowsill, while fresh fruit gleamed in a wooden bowl. He glanced over his shoulder and smiled softly. "You're up." Akali's stomach growled again in reply. "I heard," Pantheon chuckled. "Sit." She lowered herself carefully onto a stool at the counter, watching as he plated up a stack of golden brown flatbreads drizzled with honey, alongside fresh berries and slices of cheese. "I wasn't expecting this," she admitted, eyeing the spread. "I don't believe in half measures," Pantheon said simply, setting the plate in front of her. "Eat. You'll need your strength." Akali picked up a piece of warm bread, tearing it with her fingers. The inside was pillowy, flecked with herbs. She took a bite and immediately moaned softly. "Oh my gods." Pantheon's brow lifted, amused. "Good? This is divine." She mumbled through another bite. "Like, better than Noxian street food divine." "I'll take that as a compliment." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her eat with quiet satisfaction. When she paused to breathe, he nodded toward her bandages. "You're healing, but you're not ready to leave yet." Akali frowned. "I can fight." Pantheon raised an eyebrow. "Not with a torn side and half your blood missing. No, you're staying until you're strong enough." She narrowed her eyes at him, but then sighed, defeated. "Fine. Good." He pushed a mug of warm tea toward her. "In the meantime, your work." She blinked. "Work? You said you wanted to learn." His lips curved into a subtle grin. "You're officially my apprentice." Akali stared down at her empty plate, then back up at his imposing figure. "This is going to be weird." Pantheon laughed softly. "Only if you make it." Lessons at the hearth. The next few days passed in a rhythm Akali had never known. Each morning, Pantheon woke before sunrise to stoke the fire, grinding grains into flour, mixing doughs by hand, preparing proofing baskets. Akali followed, sometimes groggily, sometimes wide-eyed, absorbing everything. He taught her how to measure by feel, palming flour instead of weighing, testing hydration by the stickiness between fingertips. "Bread isn't numbers," he explained, guiding her hands into a mixing bowl. "It's balance. It's listening." She wasn't convinced until she kneaded for the first time, pressing the dough under his watchful eye. "It's alive," she murmured, feeling the texture shift beneath her palms. "Exactly." His voice was low, pleased. "It responds to you." Of course, there were incidents. The first batch of flatbreads she rolled out were too thick. "These could double as shields," Pantheon teased. Another time, she forgot to slash the tops of the balls before baking, leading to awkward, split loaves. "My bread exploded," Akali groaned, holding up the jagged loaf. "War bread," Pantheon deadpanned. They laughed often. She hadn't laughed like this in a long time. And slowly, the space between them shifted. Each time Pantheon guided her hands on the dough, her skin tingled beneath his. Each time their shoulders brushed at the counter, she caught herself lingering. She noticed how he wiped sweat from his brow with his forearm, how his eyes softened when he watched the bread rise, and he noticed the way her hair fell into her face when she concentrated, the small crease in her brow when she failed, the quiet pride when she succeeded. They moved around each other like dancers, familiar, hesitant, closer each day. One evening, on the fourth night, as they pulled a tray of golden pastries from the oven, Akali leaned against the counter, watching Pantheon brush them with honey glaze. "You know," she said softly, "you're nothing like the stories." He glanced over. "What stories?" "Pantheon, the unbreakable spear, slayer of titans. They make you sound untouchable." She tilted her head, smiling faintly. But here you are, baking scones. Pantheon set the brush down, meeting her gaze steadily. I was a weapon, he said quietly. Not a man. He stepped closer, stopping just across from her. Now I'm learning what it means to build, instead of destroy. Akali felt her breath hitch. The warmth between them felt heavier tonight, thicker than the heat of the oven. She looked up at him, her voice soft. And do you miss it? The fight? His hand brushed a stray lock of hair from her cheek, fingers lingering for a heartbeat. Not tonight, he murmured. Their eyes held, a heartbeat stretched long. Then, too. But then Pantheon pulled back, clearing his throat, turning away. Let's clean up, he said gruffly. Akali exhaled, a small, knowing smile curling at the corners of her lips. Maybe peace wasn't so boring after all. Chapter 3. Ashes of the Spear. The fire in the hearth had burned low. Only embers remained, casting faint orange glows across the bakery walls. Outside, the mountain wind sighed against the windows. Inside, Pantheon sat alone at the long wooden table, a single candle flickering beside him. Akali was asleep in his bed again, her breathing steady beyond the door. He could hear it faintly, a small comfort. He stared down at his hands, rough, calloused palms, fingers marked with faint scars. Hands that once held a spear, hands that once wielded the wrath of the stars, hands that now kneaded dough. He flexed them slowly, feeling the ache of old injuries, the weight of old sins, and his mind drifted backward. The battles of the aspect. Long ago, before the stars betrayed him, before the divine mantle slipped from his grasp, he had carried the name Pantheon proudly. He was the war god incarnate, the celestial spear, a being forged for one purpose, to fight. He remembered standing atop the peak of Mount Targon, the heavens swirling above as the stars descended like molten fire. He had gazed down at Runeterra, its plains and rivers stretched below, and had felt invincible. He remembered the battle against Aatrox, when the fallen Darkin cleaved through entire phalanxes, his blade blotting out the sun. Pantheon had charged alone across the scorched fields, spear raised, shield shattered, refusing to fall even as Aatrox's dark blade pierced his chest. He had fought even as his divine power flickered, even as the stars turned away. And when the aspect left him to die, it was Atreus who stood back up. A mortal man, a stubborn man, a man too furious to yield. He had beaten back the Darkin with nothing but his own fury, his own broken body. He had won, but the cost. Names in the ashes. He closed his eyes, the names surfacing unbidden. Iona, his childhood friend, who had tried to dissuade him from climbing the mountain, slain during a Noxian incursion while he fought elsewhere. Doros, his commander, mentor, and the man who placed the first spear in his hand, crushed beneath a falling siege tower while Atreus had led a doomed charge. Helia, his sister, his gentle, stubborn sister, gone to sickness he could not fight with a blade. And so many others, brothers in arms, lovers, friends. Each battle left him standing alone on fields of the dead. The wind cold against his skin, the victory hollow in his chest. What had all the fighting brought him? A broken body, an empty house, a name feared, not loved. He pressed a hand over his heart, feeling the quiet thud beneath his ribs. I've buried too many. He whispered to the darkness. The turning, the moment he knew he was done, was not a grand revelation on a battlefield. It was a small, quiet thing, a village, a raid. He had arrived too late. A child sat amid the ashes, holding a loaf of burned bread in her tiny hands, rocking back and forth. She looked up at him, not in awe, not in gratitude, in fear. She saw a killer, not a savior, and in that instant, the spear felt heavier than it ever had. His armor felt suffocating. He dropped the spear and walked away, back to the hearth. The next day, he built his oven. With stone, with ash, with hands that had once destroyed. He gathered grain, traded with the farmers down the slopes, and learned to mill flour by hand. The first loaf was terrible. The second, barely edible. The third, better. And slowly, day by day, the act of creating something nourished him in a way no battle ever had. He baked bread to feed, not to conquer. He shaped loaves instead of war formations. He learned the quiet joy of kneading, waiting, rising, instead of killing, conquering, raising. And with each loaf, the spear grew dustier in the corner. Present night, Pantheon exhaled slowly, drawing himself back to the now. Akali stirred in the other room. He heard the creak of the bed as she shifted. Her quiet murmur. He stood, lifting the candle, and walked toward the bedroom door. She was half awake, blinking blearily at him. Couldn't sleep? She asked groggily. No, he said softly. She patted the bed beside her. Sit. He hesitated. Then did. They sat in the dark, listening to the wind. Was it always bread? She asked quietly. No, he admitted. At first, it was just not war. But then, it became more. It became a way to honor what I'd lost, to honor those who couldn't build anymore. He looked down at his hands again, then at hers, small, nimble, inked with the shadows of a ninja's life. These hands have taken so much from the world, he murmured. I want them to finally give something back. Akali's gaze softened. She reached out, placing her hand gently atop his. You already have, she whispered. The warmth between them deepened in the quiet night, neither breaking the silence. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead. Inside, two warriors sat together, scarred, stubborn, searching, and for the first time in years, Pantheon felt like he wasn't alone. The wind had died down. The mountain air, so often biting, had quieted into a gentle hush that cradled the bakery in stillness. A low fire glowed in the hearth, casting long shadows across the stone walls and wooden beams. Akali stood in the doorway to the bedroom, watching Pantheon by the kitchen table as he stacked cooled loaves into a cloth basket. You never stop moving, she said, arms crossed loosely over her chest. Pantheon looked up. There's always work. Maybe, she said, stepping closer. But even a mountain rests. Her voice was soft, purposeful. Something different shimmered between them now. No longer just companionship or flirtation. Something deeper, heavier, warmer. He straightened as she reached him. She was close now, close enough that her presence pressed against him like heat. Let me take some of that weight, she whispered. He met her gaze. His breath caught. For all his battles, all the wars he had endured, this was what truly disarmed him. The way she looked at him, not as a god, not as a legend, but as a man. Her hand rose, fingertips brushing his chest, resting lightly over his heart. I see you, she said. Not the stars, not the spear, just you. Pantheon's hands came to rest on her waist, uncertain at first, then anchoring her as if afraid she'd disappear. His voice was husky, quiet. And I see you, Akali, not the rebel, Not the ninja, just you. The silence that followed was its own language. Then she leaned up, closing the space between them. Their lips met, tentative at first, then deeper, like something long held back finally given permission to bloom. Her hands slid up around his neck, his arms wrapped around her, lifting her slightly, drawing her into him fully. They kissed again, slower, longer this time. Her mouth parted, his breath hitched as her tongue brushed his, exploratory, teasing. His hand cupped the back of her head, fingers tangled in her hair. The kiss deepened with quiet urgency, years of pain and longing unraveling between them. When they parted, they lingered there, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other in. Akali whispered, "Let's not be alone tonight." Pantheon didn't answer with words. He simply lifted her in his arms, strong and sure, and carried her through the bedroom door. The bedroom. The air was warmer here. The firelight flickered across the quilt, the wooden walls, their skin. He set her down gently on the bed, and she pulled him down with her, their bodies molding together easily. They kissed again, longer now, slower. Their hands moved over each other in reverence, not haste. Akali's fingers slid beneath the hem of his tunic, feeling the warmth of his skin. His body was a map of battle, scars old and new, but beneath them was a man who craved softness, craved touch, craved her. He let her undress him piece by piece. First the tunic, then the undershirt. She kissed along his collarbone, over his heart. He shuddered, not from cold, but from the quiet unraveling of walls he'd spent years building. His hands found the ties at her waist, undoing them, slowly, deliberately. Her shirt fell away, and his breath caught as he looked at her. Not just her body, but the totality of her, lit by the glow of the firelight. Strong, beautiful, alive. They came together again beneath the sheets, bodies pressed close, breaths mingling. There was no need for words. Their movements spoke of years without peace, of bruised hearts, learning how to beat again. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And when they finally lay tangled in each other's arms, sweat cooling on their skin, neither spoke for a long time. Later, Pantheon lay on his back, eyes fixed on the wooden beams above. Akali rested against his chest, her fingers tracing the scars along his side. "I didn't think I'd feel this again," she whispered. He turned his head to look at her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You and me both." She smiled against his skin, and he felt it, more deeply than he thought possible. "I like this version of you," she murmured. He chuckled softly. "The baker, the man," she corrected. He kissed her temple, lingering there, and as the fire dimmed, they drifted into sleep, entwined in something far stronger than war, far deeper than pain, something rising like bread in a hearth. Chapter 5. Smoke on the horizon. The dawn broke slow and golden over the mountains. Inside the bakery, warmth lingered beneath the quilts. Akali stirred first, stretching languidly against the broad chest beneath her cheek. She felt Pantheon's steady breathing, the rise and fall of a man at peace. "I could get used to this," she murmured. Pantheon stirred, his arm tightening around her waist. His lips brushed her hair in silent agreement. For a few blessed moments, the world outside didn't exist. No war, no kinku, no gods, just warmth, just then. But then, a knock, urgent, harsh, a fist pounding against the front door. Pantheon's body went still beneath her. Akali lifted her head, alert now. Another knock. Louder. Pantheon sighed deeply, kissed her forehead once, then rose from the bed. His silhouette, tall and solid in the dawn light, moved toward his discarded tunic. Akali sat up, a quiet unease curling in her gut. At the door, when Pantheon opened the door, a village boy stood panting on the threshold, eyes wild with terror. "Please, you have to come!" the boy cried. "The town, it's burning! He's here!" Pantheon's face darkened. "Who?" "The one they call Crixes," the boy gasped. "The Black Flame. He came down from the northern cliffs with raiders. They're destroying everything. Please, sir, we were told you lived here. You're the only one who can stop him." Pantheon's hands curled into fists at his sides. The name hit him like a spear to the chest. Crixes, the warlord he'd once defeated in the Shuraman foothills, a tyrant who had sworn revenge as Pantheon left him broken in the dust, a man who should have been dead. And now he was back. Pantheon's gaze lifted toward the distant peaks. Faintly, too faint for Akali to see, he could already make out the curling black smoke rising over the next valley. The choice? Akali appeared beside him, leaning against the doorframe, still pale but determined. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly. "No," Pantheon said quietly. "You'll need me." I said no. His voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. Akali stepped forward, fire in her eyes. "Don't do this." Pantheon turned toward her fully then, and for a moment, the war mask, the old face of Pantheon, the aspect of war, returned to his features. "I won't lose you too," he said, his voice raw. She blinked. "I'm not someone you get to protect like a piece of bread in your pantry." Pantheon exhaled sharply. "You're still healing, Akali. If you come, you'll slow me down, or worse. I'd rather die by your side than sit here useless while you risk your life," she snapped. Pantheon stepped close. His hands came to her shoulders. He bent his forehead to hers. "I've only just found peace with you," he murmured. "Don't make me lose it tonight." Their eyes locked, battle-hardened wills clashing without a single blade drawn. But then, his hands shifted. He pressed a kiss to her lips, deep, aching, final. "I'm sorry." And before she could move, before she could guess his intent, he tied a long rope around her waist and anchored it to the bedpost, knotting it fast with a sailor's precision. "Pantheon!" she yelled, struggling. "I can't let you follow. Let me go!" she cried, thrashing against the vines. He kissed her one last time. Softly, sadly. "I'll come back," he promised. Then he turned, grabbing his spear from the corner, his shield from the rack, striding out into the cold dawn. The door slammed shut behind him. Akali screamed after him, struggling harder. "Damn you, Atris!" she yelled. "You better come back!" The road to battle. Pantheon strode down the path toward the rising smoke, his silhouette framed by the pale light of morning. The spear felt heavy in his grip, but familiar. "Just when I thought I'd left this behind," he muttered. But his steps did not falter. The town awaited. The villain returned, and though he had found peace in the hearth, he was still the spear, and tonight he would be war again. Chapter 6. The last spear rises. The rope cut into her skin. Akali twisted, teeth gritted, sweat slick on her brow. "Damn him," she growled, pulling harder. The knot held fast at first, but Akali wasn't just a ninja by name. She shifted her weight, braced her foot against the bedpost, and slowly worked a hidden blade from her sleeve. "You really thought this would stop me?" she whispered fiercely. With a quick flick, the blade sliced through the rope. She staggered forward, heart pounding. "Hang on, Pantheon," she muttered, grabbing her boots and strapping her gear over the bandages still hugging her ribs. Out the door, down the path, toward the rising black smoke on the horizon. The battlefield. The village was ablaze when she arrived. Fires licking the thatched roofs, villagers scattering in terror. Akali's gaze swept frantically through the chaos, and then she saw him. Pantheon stood at the village square's center, spear planted in the earth, shield raised. He was bleeding from a deep gash along his thigh, another at his shoulder. His breath came in labored gasps. Across from him loomed Crixus, a towering figure in jagged black armor, a cruel blade dripping with flame. "Still standing, old man," Crixus sneered. "Should have stayed in your oven." Pantheon spat blood onto the dirt. "Not while there's something worth protecting." He surged forward, spear flashing. Their weapons clashed in a burst of sparks, ringing across the night. Akali watched, frozen for a heartbeat. Then Pantheon staggered. Crixus's blade drove deep into his side. "No!" Akali screamed. Pantheon collapsed to one knee, his spear slipping from his grasp. Crixus raised his sword high for the killing blow, but before it could fall, a flash of silver. Akali leapt from the shadows, kunai whirling, slicing across Crixus's exposed throat. A spray of dark blood arced through the air. Crixus gurgled, stumbling back. She spun low, severing his hamstring. He fell, roaring in rage. And with a final, brutal thrust, she drove her blade through his heart. Crixus shuddered once, and was still. The hill. "Pantheon!" Akali dropped beside him, panting, chest heaving. He lay slumped against the base of the fountain, his hand pressed weakly over the bleeding wound. "Akali!" he rasped. She pulled his arm over her shoulders, dragging him slowly, step by step, away from the burning square, up a grassy hill overlooking the village. He groaned with each movement, but said nothing. At the top, she eased him down onto the grass, propping him gently against a stone. The stars were out now, shimmering coldly above. "You're going to be fine," she whispered fiercely. "I'll get help. Pantheon's hand found hers, squeezing faintly. "No, Akali." His voice was soft now, fading. "No more fighting, not tonight." Tears welled in her eyes. "You're not dying, not after everything." He gave a faint smile. "You saved them, you saved them," she whispered back. His gaze lifted to the stars. "I wanted to be more than a weapon," he murmured. "To build, to feed, to love." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You did," she whispered. "You did, Atreus." His thumb brushed her hand faintly. A last touch. "I'm glad it was you, here at the end." And then, as the stars wheeled silently overhead, his hand went still. Akali buried her face in his chest and wept. The burial. The next morning, beneath the rising sun, Akali dug the grave herself. She laid him beneath the hill's lone tree, overlooking the valley. She set his spear and shield as a marker at the head, and she sat by the grave until the last shadows of dawn had fled. Only then did she rise, wiping the dirt from her hands, and walk back toward the small stone cottage. The hearth. Days passed. The oven glowed again. A new hand mixed the dough, kneaded the bread. A new figure stood at the counter, flour dusting her cheeks, her green eyes focused on the task. Akali rolled out the flatbreads, slashed the loaves before baking, fed the villagers who climbed the winding path seeking warmth and nourishment. The bakery sign still read Atreus's hearth. She never changed it. And every night, as the fire crackled low, she would glance at the old spear and shield mounted above the mantel. "I hope you're watching," she'd murmur. Then she'd turn back to her dough, the rhythm of creation filling the quiet, because the world still needed bread, and she would honor him, one loaf at a time. The end. Epilogue. The warmth of the hearth. The wind howled bitterly as the traveler trudged up the mountain path. Cloak pulled tight around his shoulders. Snowflakes clung to his lashes. His boots crunched against frozen ground. He hadn't meant to climb this far. He'd been lost for hours in the winding Targon foothills, hoping for shelter, warmth, anything. Then, at last, through the swirling snow, a small building came into view, a stone cottage, smoke curling from a chimney, a faint glow in the windows. Above the door, a weathered wooden sign, Atreus's hearth. The traveler pushed the door open, a gust of cold air following him inside. Warmth hit him instantly. Thick, fragrant, comforting. The scent of rising bread, of wood smoke and herbs. A fire crackled in the hearth. Behind the counter stood a woman. Her hair was streaked with silver now, tied back loosely. A faint scar traced her left cheek. Tattoos still curled along her arms, though faded with time. She wore an apron dusted with flour, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hands deep in a mound of dough. But her green eyes were bright, steady, alive. She looked up as the traveler entered, a small, knowing smile curling at her lips. "Well," she said, wiping her hands on a cloth, "you look half frozen." I wasn't expecting a bakery all the way up here," the traveler stammered. She chuckled softly. "Most don't." He stepped closer, gazing around at the loaves cooling on racks, the simple wooden tables, the shield and spear mounted above the mantel. "Was this place always here?" "Not always," she said quietly, her gaze lingering on the shield. "But long enough." She set a warm flatbread on a plate and pushed it toward him. "Eat," she said. "The mountain takes enough from everyone. Let it give you something back tonight." The traveler sat at the counter, tearing into the bread. It was incredible. He hadn't tasted anything so simple, yet so perfect in years. As he ate, he watched the woman move around the kitchen, kneading, shaping, tending the oven with practiced grace. She hummed under her breath, a quiet rhythm. "Do you live here alone?" he asked. She paused, glancing again at the spear and shield. "I keep the hearth," she said softly. "For someone who left it burning." The traveler followed her gaze. Was he a warrior? She smiled faintly, wistfully. Yes. Then she returned to her bread. The fire crackled. Outside, the snow fell silently. And inside, the baker worked. A legend in her own quiet way. The warmth of the hearth, still alive. The end.